You can now subscribe and save 20% off every order with your Strava Craft Coffee subscription. We know a bunch of you have taken advantage of our one-time code, DNVR20. You can still use that. But now you can get 20% off your favorite coffee forever. Lock in a Strava Craft Coffee subscription. They'll send you a new bag or 2 bags if you want it. Every 2, 3, 4, 6, or 8 weeks, you'll get 20% off every single time. You'll never have to enter your credit card. You'll never have to wonder, oh man, am I almost out of coffee? Do I need to make a grocery run today? Et cetera, et cetera. You know, if you have that coffee, you'll be able to get by. So make sure you get that Strava Craft Coffee subscription set up, or just use the code DNVR20 for your one-time code to try their rich, tasty CBD-infused coffee. You can also try them at Carbon Cafe and Bar, Drip Denver, Slow High Coffee, Blue Sparrow Coffee, and Max Market. Check them out, Strava Craft Coffee, and get that subscription so you can get 20% off every single time you get some Strava.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. 2 goes out to Zach, Mace, RK, and the bar. 3 for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number 4 we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, no matter how Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a breakfast crew and a friend bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us at the DNVR. We are DNVR.
We are DNVR, and we are presented by MSU Denver. Check out msudenver.edu/online to scope out all they have to offer. It is the Colorado institution providing rigorous and affordable online programs, taught by professors who bring the real world into the classroom. So spring semester is starting very, very soon, and if you're going to get in on all they have to offer at MSU Denver, come on and check it out and get in and get some of those spring classes taken. You might have a little extra time on your hands this spring. So check them out, msudenver.edu/online today.
My boys, what's going on? Happy to be talking with you guys today and rolling with you on this hump day.
Yes, it is a hump day, and we start the pod today with unfortunate news for one of the Broncos, and that, of course, is the news coming down yesterday that Bouye would be suspended. That was Ben Albright who had that first, and Adam Schefter, I believe, had it first this morning. 6-game suspension official for Bouye. It's, of course, tied in with Will Fuller and Bradley Roby, and it sounds like there's going to be some litigation because all those guys claim that this was someone they trusted and someone that they believed wouldn't put them in this type of position. The NFL, at this point at least, doesn't care. They're all suspended.
Yeah, the question is, where is the litigation headed? Is it going to be litigation against the league, or is it going to be litigation against Brian Cushing, who, of course, is the former player who is connected with all the guys who've had
of all people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's sort of like I'll bring this name up. It's sort of like if you rely on Bill Romanowski back in the day, and he had plenty of supplements, and to say some of them were semi-legal is to be kind. So yeah, I wonder where the litigation is going to go. The thing is, the NFL, it doesn't surprise me they're coming down with the 6-game suspension, even with some questions about the nature of all this, just because when it comes to PEDs, the NFL is typically unforgiving on this. They have some wiggle room in other areas, but PEDs have typically been a binary thing. I mean, you've had guys, remember Virgil Green a few years ago getting suspended for a PED when it was in medicine he was taking for another condition that was not related to football. But the NFL said, sorry, it's a PED. You knew it was on the list. Take your suspension. So I don't think the NFL is going to be forgiving here.
Yeah, and I mean, he did not pass his appeal, didn't get any help there. Mm-hmm. And guys, this is big. 6 games, not only for the Final Four of this season, which, okay, whatever. Broncos aren't in it anyways, but the first 2 of next year. I mean, what if the Broncos are playing the Chiefs in those first 2, the Chargers? I mean, that is where this really stinks for next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the question is there a next year for AJ Bouye? Because, of course, there's no more guaranteed money on his contract after this season. I'm sure the Broncos internally aren't stoked that they're going to miss 6 games of this season for him. Obviously, he won't get paid for those, so they'll save a little bit of money there. Maybe they're actually happy about that. I don't know. But either way, this is now 2 guys this year who are going to be suspended, who are free agent acquisitions / trade acquisitions for the Broncos in the offseason. Of course, the other being Melvin Gordon. And the question just remains, like, how do the Broncos handle this? How do they want to go forward with this? Because, again, with Melvin Gordon, they might be able to get out of his contract, although if he keeps playing like he did on Sunday Night Football, they might not want to. And then with AJ Bouye, they don't have to get out of his contract, but they can say, all right, we've seen enough. You're not the guy that we thought we were getting.
Yeah, and you have to do the math on this. I mean, it's just about the salary cap. Right now, according to overthecap.com, the Broncos have $170.7 million in expenditures already on the books for next year. And of course, the cap could be as low as $175 million. And if that's the case, you've got to make some really tough choices, starting with you got to have the money to have your RFAs, Alexander Johnson, Tim Patrick, and Philip Lindsay. And so that they're going to be north of $3 million a pop if they both get, or if all 3 get second round tenders, which I expect may be the case just because of how they've played. And then you get in the conversation about Justin Simmons. Do you tag him? Do you give him a long-term deal? The conversation about Shelby Harris. So if it's $175 million, you're looking at Bouye's contract with no dead money and Jarrell Casey's contract with no dead money. All of a sudden, that's $25 million. Now, there have been rumblings that because there's an expectation of fans in the stands next year, that the cap could go to $195 million, but there's going to be a battle royale among owners regarding that, because some owners believe that's effectively giving the players an interest-free loan, that there's some resistance to that. And of course, revenues this year took a greater hit than even $175 million cap would justify. So there are a lot of moving parts to this, guys, and we're not going to know how they shake out here for another couple of months, I imagine.
Well, Broncos will free up a couple $1 million this year not having to pay him. So that helps because that'll roll over. And then next year, if they do decide to cut him, they'll save $13.5 million. And as May said, no dead cap. So that's a lot of money right there. And guys, the really unfortunate thing about Bouye is just 1 week ago, Vic Fangio said we're starting to see the type of player he can be. So the Broncos didn't even get a good evaluation this year of what he can be. And like we've said with Drew Lock, that's the worst case scenario this year, is not knowing what you have at the end of the season. You want to find out what type of player AJ Bouye is going to be. Is he worth that $13.5 million? Now the Broncos won't get an official determination on that by the end of this season.
Yeah, Mace yesterday had brought up first-round corner as a potential target for the Broncos, and that might have just become a little more real. Real quick, I just want to touch on a tweet that I sent out yesterday about the Broncos additions in free agency and via trade over the last 2 years. Guys, this is just absurd. Juwan James injured, Theo Riddick injured, Flacco injured, Kareem Jackson suspended last season, Bryce Callahan injured, Melvin Gordon facing suspension, Jarrell Casey injured, AJ Bouye suspended, Mark Barron injured, Graham Glasgow he's been mostly healthy, Nick Van healthy, Sam Martin healthy. I actually forgot one because it wasn't like a big time free agent acquisition, but Mike Purcell, who might be one of the best ones on this list, also injured.
Yeah, it's been tough sledding. It's been tough sledding, guys.
And a lot of people in my mentions blaming that on John Elway. Man, I have a hard time doing that. The ones that I said you can maybe point to Elway at are Juwan James and Bryce Callahan. And Juwan James, you were just desperate, and so you made a desperate move, and it didn't work. Bryce Callahan, the Broncos got a discount on Bryce Callahan because of his injury history. So, that one to me is a little bit of a wash, although you were counting on him, and he's been injured now both seasons.
Yeah, and that's why he lingered a few days. They got a discount. Remember, he was a second wave guy. He wasn't a first wave guy. And we were all sitting there that offseason wondering, okay, why is he lingering on the market? And it turned out it was because of the foot issues that have plagued him. But there's no doubt that this year he's been worth every penny the Broncos paid for him, and certainly he's in their plans for next year. But but even then, I'd say that Bryce Callahan, on balance, because of how well he's played, I don't think that's a bad deal. Even if you say, okay, $14 million and you got nothing year one and you're getting everything in year two, he's basically playing like a number one cornerback right now. And the going rate for that is usually about $14 million.
Yeah, if he would have played this whole season, I probably would have been more on board with that. But you're getting 12 or so games maybe from him. Or was it even less than that? Either way, that's a little bit of an overpay. But again, those are the only two that I think like John Elway really had control over. He certainly didn't know Melvin Gordon was going to go out drinking and hit spear. And same thing for Kareem Jackson. So, those things aren't predictable when you're a general manager, unless they have a history of it, which neither of those guys did. Anyways, speaking of cornerback in the first round, that leads me to our next discussion. It's the moment that everyone has not been waiting for, a conversation that no one wanted to have this season, a conversation that we've now had every season over the last 4 years, this being the fourth, and one that's not all that fun, but it is important. Broncos taking on the Panthers this week, and that is extra notable because both the Broncos and the Panthers are 4-8. Now, the Panthers, via strength of schedule, are the worst 4-8 team in terms of the way the NFL draft position is ranked, meaning they are in line for the 7th pick. The Broncos are the best 4-8 team by strength of schedule, meaning they are in line for the 10th pick. So the question becomes, what is best for the Broncos? Because the only way they can jump the Carolina Panthers in draft position is by having a worse record than them. And, of course, losing on Sunday is the fast track to doing that.
Yeah, and guys, this is very, very easy and straightforward to me on what the best route is for the Broncos. And that all depends on Drew Lock. Guys, if Drew Lock is not the guy, lose all 4 games. Don't win another game because you know what? 4-12, even with the second toughest strength of schedule in the NFL, which is probably going to lose you every single tiebreaker that you face unless somehow the Jets rattle off 4 straight wins and you tie with them. Unless that, then you're not going to win any tiebreaker. And so being 6-10, okay, great. You finished on a 2-game win streak. Now you're picking, you could be picking 14 if you're 6-10. That is the worst case scenario. And I know we've had this conversation in the past, but guys, what has winning at the end of the season got the Broncos the last few years? Nothing. I don't think there's anything in terms of momentum that can help the Broncos the following year. So this is so clear to me. If Drew Lock comes out, balls out, then of course, win these games. That's great because then you can take the second best cornerback at the 16th pick or whatever you're going to do in the draft there. But if Drew Lock is not the guy, do not have a game like you had against the Chiefs where the defense, because if you have a game like you had against the Chiefs, probably going to win against the 4-8 Carolina Panthers. Do not do that, guys. That's the worst thing.
So yeah. Ask the 49ers as well about that from 2 years ago. I mean, they finished 4-12. The result was Nick Bosa, and he was a transformative player for them in getting them to the Super Bowl. I mean, there can be value in having an incredibly lousy finish, but unfortunately, like you said, RK, the tie breaks don't favor the Broncos. They're not going to favor the Broncos because they're sitting there and their opponents have a .568 winning percentage. I mean, you take, for example, the Chargers, who are 1 game worse than the Broncos. The Chargers right now pick 5th, and the Broncos would pick 10th. The Chargers, their opponents have a .497 winning percentage. And if you're wondering, where is this huge difference in the Chargers and the Broncos coming from? Because they play virtually the same schedule for 14 games. Well, a big part of that is in the one NFC South opponent, the AFC South opponent, the Chargers got the Jaguars, the Broncos got the Titans. In their one AFC North opponent, the Chargers got the Bengals back in week 1. The Broncos got the Steelers. I mean, just think about that. So you could even say that last year's good finish is impacting this year on the strength of schedule.
Yeah, and I've got a whole piece coming out about that because it is really crazy just how, it's a game of inches, but it's also, 1 inch here or there can affect your team for years to come. The Broncos finished second in the division last year. A lot of people forget that. And because of that, it made their schedule much tougher this year. They're not a team that should be playing a second-place schedule. And obviously it only affects 2 games. But that's 2 losses for the Broncos. So it's that's tough. What I will say here is, Zach, you were right on line with where I'm going. There are a couple situations that are good for the Broncos and a couple situations that are terrible for the Broncos. Drew Lock plays well, Broncos win, great. Drew Lock plays well, Broncos lose, even better. Drew Lock plays poorly, Broncos lose, fine. Drew Lock plays poorly, Broncos win, terrible. So there's 4 possible situations there. 3 of them are okay. 1 of them can't work. Just can't happen.
Yeah, and I could easily see the Broncos being 2-2 down the stretch, even with their cornerbacks out. And I could see exactly going the way you described, that Drew Lock doesn't play well, but the Broncos win because of other things. They win because they can run the ball well. They win because they rush the passer. They win because maybe the Raiders are starting a slide toward incompetence here at the end of the year based on the form they've displayed the last 2 games. And then the Chargers in week 16 remain the Chargers. I mean, these are things that could realistically happen even with the Broncos down to cornerbacks 4, 5, and 6 playing extensively on Sunday and beyond. I mean, it's a legitimate possibility what you said. And so it's unfortunately, the players, they're going to try, the coaches are going to try, that's just how this is. And if you lose, it's not intentional, but they are better off losing. No question.
Guys, you may need an all-out blitz at the end of a game in order to save your draft positioning, because let's look back at the last couple of years when the Broncos haven't been playing for anything in December. In 2017, the Broncos went 2-2 in their last 4 games to, of course, finish a magnificent 5-11. Well, what did that do? That took them out of the Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield sweepstakes. And we know that John Elway would have liked Sam Darnold. And who knows? Maybe Sam Darnold would have been the same guy that he is in New York. But a lot of people think that, if Sam Darnold's somewhere else, that he's having a great career. Well, Broncos end up drafting Bradley Chubb instead. Good player, maybe not the best pick as we're sitting here right now. The next year, the Broncos...
pick than Darnold obviously would have been Josh Allen.
Sure, but I'm just saying where John Elway was. He wasn't picking a quarterback unless it was Sam Darnold, maybe Baker Mayfield. Yep. In 2018, the Broncos went 0-4 down the stretch. Good job. That didn't get them much in terms of a quarterback in the first round. But the fight, and then last year, guys, Broncos finished 3-1, and that was okay because you thought Drew Lock was the guy. And so that's kind of exactly where the Broncos sit now. We've seen how all of these scenarios can play out in the past, and how that affects potentially this year.
Well, let's think about it this year and relative to one team that is surely going to come up quite a bit over the next few months. That's the Detroit Lions, and the Lions are sitting there at 5-7 right now. But the Lions closing stretch here, guys, is incredibly demanding. They got that win Sunday for Darrell Bevell in his debut against the Bears, but they closed with Green Bay, Tennessee, Tampa Bay, and Minnesota. The Lions could easily lose all 4 of those games and be at 5-11. And the reason why that comes up is, let's say there's a conversation about Matthew Stafford. They decide, okay, we're moving on. Our new head coach, our new GM wants to go in a different direction. Well, if you're going to make a trade for Matthew Stafford, doesn't it behoove you to have a higher draft pick? Because then the Lions may say, okay, we're going to need to pick a quarterback. We're going to need to move up. maybe let's deal with Denver here to move up, and then you might be able to get Matthew Stafford for a little bit less than you anticipate, because there's going to be some value in the Lions moving up a few picks, because the difference in picks in terms of value accelerates the higher up you are in the first round. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing that has to come into play here as well.
Guys, it's incredible how much hype there is around Matthew Stafford on Twitter with him coming to the Broncos now. I mean, Jerry Jeudy had some interesting tweets yesterday, and all the comments seem to be, oh, don't worry, man, Matthew Stafford's heading your way next year. You know, pictures of Matthew Stafford wearing a 9 orange and blue jersey. That's starting to really pick up online.
I don't want any quarterbacks numbered 9, please. Matthew Stafford, if you come here, gotta pick something else. Sorry.
So if Drew Brees became a free agent, you wouldn't want him wearing number 9?
No, can't wear number 9.
Why not?
Because that's the number that Jeff Driscoll wears. That's the number that Kevin Hogan wore. Just 9. It doesn't fly around here.
Ryan, the good thing,
change things up.
They weren't here long enough to spoil it. I mean, those guys have just been cup of coffee people at this point.
The good thing is let's say he was to go on either Brees or Stafford and have, a Hall of Fame career in Denver, then he wouldn't have to be a footnote on anything in Denver. He'd get his own plaque.
That's true. Yeah. Well, he's not wearing 18 or 7. That's for sure. Can't wear 6 either. That one is also off limits. Anyways. I don't know about Matthew Stafford. I don't know about people jumping to conclusions about Jerry Jeudy's tweets. They just looked like standard tweets for a young NFL player to me. I didn't read much into those. There was definitely ways you could read into it, and I actually jokingly sent some friends a joke about what it could have meant. And then I saw like several people were actually thinking that's what it meant. So who knows? Could mean anything.
Don't worry. We'll get into them in the comment section.
Oh, boy. I'm sure we will. So anyways, the Broncos, for them to be able to jump teams, obviously have to lose. And Carolina's a start. What's crazy is, if the Broncos lose and then Atlanta and Houston also lose this week, well, the Broncos would only move up 1 position by losing to the Panthers this week. That's actually regardless of what happens in front of them. I guess an Eagles win could get them to move up 2 spots. And I think the Eagles are playing someone good. So
I think that they're playing the Saints.
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
Jalen Hurts' debut. I mean, better hope Jalen Hurts is the truth here. I mean, and that being said, the Broncos have gotten some help. Washington emerging the last few weeks has been helpful in terms of draft position, because Washington is sitting there with a strength of schedule of 461. All of those NFC East teams, except for Philadelphia, have absolutely horrible strength of schedules because the East is just so bad.
Yeah, exactly. They're all helping each other out in the draft race. But yeah, so you could potentially move up 4 spots this week if everything breaks your way, but you can guarantee yourself to move up 1 spot. And again, the players, the coaches, they're never going to do this. But what you want is one of 2 things. The best case scenario is one of 2 things. Drew Lock plays great. The Broncos win. Okay, you're moving in the right direction. You feel good about running it back with Drew next year. Drew Lock plays terrible. Broncos lose. Okay, well now you're feeling like it's time to start making those plans to move forward. And I don't think this game is that important in the sense for Drew Lock. I still think he could play well in the last 3 and give the Broncos something to think about. But as I said on Sunday, I think, or maybe it was Monday, Drew Lock is running out of games. And so eventually, the worm has to turn for him. He's going to have to start making plays, winning games, or at least putting up respectable stat lines.
Well, and not just this week, but you have 2 very important games down the stretch against the Panthers for draft position, and then also against the Chargers in 3 weeks from now. And then potentially, if the Raiders just unravel, that game at the end of the season could be an important one for draft position. And man, we've talked about this before, but playing the Raiders in week 17, have it, but look at the bigger picture. Don't just look at the tiny game against the Raiders. Look at the bigger picture there. And guys, unfortunately, with the way the Broncos' strength of schedule is, like I said, right now it's the second hardest in the NFL, only behind the Jets. And I don't think the Broncos are going to be tying with the Jets. What's unfortunate about that is it's much easier for the Broncos to fall back in the draft than move forward, because any ties with anyone right now, the Broncos get the wrong end of the stick with that right now. So you win 2 games. I mean, you may be guaranteeing yourself a pick right around 15.
Yeah. The other thing on Drew Lock, I mean, he's running out of games, but one thing that is key is he's run out of high leverage games because the Broncos, they're not in the playoff conversation right now. And if he does play well, I mean, you start saying, okay, what is the deal with Drew Lock? Why does he only play well when the season is lost? Is he the football equivalent of the September call-up in baseball that rakes in that month, but can't put it together when it matters the rest of the season before his team is out of it? And that's something that I'm sure is going to be discussed. That's why, unless Drew Lock plays at a best in the league level the next 4 weeks, whether it may be a veteran guy, but someone else is coming into that room over the next few months who could at least push Drew Lock in 2021.
Yeah, Zach, you made such a good point there about how easy it is for the Broncos to drop in this scenario. I didn't even think of that. I was only looking in front of them. Let's say the Broncos win. Let's say the Broncos win the game, and Washington, Detroit, Chicago, and San Francisco all lose. The Broncos could go from 10 all the way down to 15 just this week.
Yeah.
And then the same would be true the next week, because again, all these teams are stacked up and it's all ranked by strength of schedule. So
wait, is it 15 or 14? Because right now Arizona is sitting at 15. So yeah, but 14. I mean, shoot. I mean, the other thing is I don't think they're going to pick a young quarterback in the first round. But let's say that the Broncos do look at Zach Wilson or do even look at Justin Fields, potentially at number 2 overall. To get from 14 to number 2 or number 3 means you're potentially sacrificing 3 years of first round picks if you want to move up. So effectively, I think those conversations end if you're picking 14th. If you're picking, say, 5th to 7th, you're very much in those conversations of moving up into the top 3 for not a king's ransom, but a substantial price. But it's something where you can rationalize it. From 14, you're pretty much stuck there. Maybe a little bit of movement up and down, but you're out of the first round quarterback conversation, at least in regards to the top 3, maybe the top 4 guys.
Yeah, I mean, you get crazy with quarterbacks and start talking about 4 going in the top 10. Depending on how many desperate teams there are, you could really see potentially 5. Now, I don't expect that to happen, but it's not completely off the table at this point, because there are guys like Mac Jones who one team might fall in love with, Kyle Trask who one team might fall in love with,
or Trey Lance of North Dakota State as well.
I keep forgetting about Trey Lance because he doesn't play on Saturdays.
And yeah, exactly. And the thing is, I actually think a perfect fit for Trey Lance might be the team that we're going to see on Sunday against the Broncos, because Teddy Bridgewater should have at least another year as a quarterback. And he's playing well, but the Panthers may not want to commit to him as a long-term franchise quarterback. Carolina offers a perfect situation, I think, for Lance to come in and kind of incubate for a year or two behind a proven quarterback who's shown that he has the maturity to handle a situation like that with somebody behind him.
Well, guys, and with the Broncos, these next couple of games could literally cost them first-round picks, because, yeah, you talk about moving from 14 to 3 and how much it could cost. What if, the third best quarterback, fourth best quarterback, the one that the Broncos want, is there at 7, and if they lose, 3 of the next 4 games, and they're sitting at 7 right there, okay, then they don't have to trade anything. Let's say they win 3 of the next 4, and all based off the defense, and Drew Lock doesn't look good. So you need a quarterback. That's literally going to cost you a first-round pick to go from 14 to 7 to get your guy. So it's not just the massive jump from 14 to 3 or in the teens to 3. Your guy, especially because we're talking about so many options at quarterback, your guy could be there at 7, and all you have to do is handle these next 4 games right, and it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah, this is a make or break stretch right here. And again, it's really important for Drew Lock, but it's also really important for things to break correctly for the Broncos if they don't break correctly for Drew Lock.
Right. It can almost be a win-win, or you lose, but you win, and it kind of evens and helps that feeling of the loss.
All right.
Yes, Mace?
Well, no, I was going to say we almost need to have a viewer's guide to this week, for example, and go through the games and say who do you root for? Like, because here's an interesting one: the Los Angeles Chargers at the Atlanta Falcons, 3-9 at 4-8. Who do you root for there?
Right.
You probably root for the Chargers because they definitely won't be in a quarterback hunt.
That's exactly. And the other thing with the Falcons,
you root for the Chargers to lose.
Yeah. You root for the Chargers, and the thing with the Falcons, guys, is after that game, the Falcons play Tampa Bay, Kansas City, and Tampa Bay again to close the year. So Atlanta probably is going to be 5-11 if they lose that game, 4-2, or if they beat the Chargers, 4-12 if they lose to the Chargers. So that game is relevant. Another relevant game, of course, we mentioned Saints Eagles. You'd love to see Jalen Hurts and the Eagles pull off that upset. Then you've got I think Jacksonville is out of reach, so I don't think they're in the equations there. Green Bay and Detroit, you want the Lions to pull off the upset over the Packers. Dallas and Cincinnati. Cincinnati clearly not looking for a quarterback. Dallas, you'd think they'd sign Dak Prescott, but you never know. Dallas 3-9, Cincinnati 2-9-1. Guys, I think you got to pull for the Cowboys in this one.
Yeah, you do, especially because you're not catching Cincinnati.
Right, you're not with their one tie. It's pretty tough to get them.
Right, and then Houston against Chicago, and of course Houston doesn't have a pick because they traded Miami. But you got 4-8 at 5-7, and the interesting thing with Houston, guys, is they're one of the teams that is actually in the Broncos' range in terms of strength of schedule. The Chicago Bears aren't. That's one that's kind of a coin flip. It's tough to pick a team on that one, even though in the short term, Houston winning could allow the Broncos to move up 4 spots if they lose on Sunday.
And if you want to get deeper into the viewer guide, you could say that you want every team that's on the Broncos schedule to lose because you want their strength of schedule to go down.
Right.
Exactly.
We just may need an article that says, okay, here's what you want. Like the Patriots play the Rams, you got to say go Rams.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, and I know we've thrown a lot of information about, strength of schedules and how far the Broncos can fall and everything. I'll actually have an article on that tomorrow. So, you like hearing it, but then you can see it and visualize it tomorrow.
Perfect. All right, guys. Interesting conversation. I see it in the comments. I know no one wanted to be having this conversation. We'd much rather be talking about playoff scenarios at this juncture of the season. But unfortunately, it didn't fall that way this season for the Broncos, and they've got 4 games now for us to see really what the future of this team could look like. And you just heard it. There's a way that it can break. There's 2 ways that it can break for the Broncos that you feel good. Drew Lock plays well. You play yourself out of a good draft position. That's okay. Drew Lock plays poorly. You play yourself into a good draft position. That's okay too. What you want to avoid is the middle ground, which a lot of times in the NFL, things do end up in the middle ground. So we'll see how things shake out here. We'll talk more about this game tomorrow and Friday on the podcast. Of course, we're going to switch over to the pod side of things. So find us anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Hit us with the thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. For everyone here on the live portion, have a great rest of your day.